What up?
What's up, my friend?
I am too sober for this.
I am not nearly drunk enough for this.
I know. God, did I take my depression meds? Anyway, welcome everybody to another week of Case Files with Kat.
And Ashley.
Man, how is your week going?
Great.
It is. Tell me about it. Tell me
I didn't
all
think I
about
was going
it.
to have to really explain it.
Nope, I want to
was just
hear
gonna
it.
Stop with
Nope,
great.
you're just gonna...
Damn.
Well, I'll tell you all about mine. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Tell me.
I've just been working. You know, the usual.
What'd you do this weekend?
Oh, that. I did real old people shit. I got so excited because I ordered shelves and racks and stuff from Amazon, and they came in and I built them and organized my room. Yeah.
I love that.
That's what I did on my weekend. I organized and I got so excited. I was like texting my brother. I'm like, oh, my room is so organized right now. Like, I am so excited. And I was like,
I want
what
pictures.
has happened to me?
I want pictures.
It's not
awesome.
that exciting, but you know,
That's awesome.
I was like, this is what my life has come to, is decorating and organizing and rearranging my room.
I had a really busy weekend. We went to go see a show. We went to Chicken and Pickle.
Oh, nice.
We did lots of laundry and watched some of the game show called The Mole.
Oh, okay.
That was exciting. So we're still in it.
I did go to Galveston and get seashells. So, like, when I say old people shit,
That
like
is some old people shit.
I organized all day on Friday night and Saturday, and then Sunday I spent the day collecting seashells.
Seashells?
Seashells on the beach.
Seashells on the seashore.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's my life now.
I love it. I'm all about it.
I'm going to start collecting cats soon.
You wish.
I know. I do wish. I do. But anyways,
She wants to steal socks.
I do. I want to steal both of them.
Even the mean one?
Oh, he's not that
I know.
mean.
He doesn't like swipe at you or anything anymore. He doesn't do that anymore because he knows he's going to be
I
replaced.
think if I kidnapped him, that may be, a little bit different story.
Yeah. But no, like, he's a different cat. He's been nurmled into sweetness.
Oh, poor kitty.
Yeah, no, it's okay. That's
fine.
He loves socks. They like groom each other. I think he tries to hump him quite a bit. I think he like loves him too much. And Socks is like, dude, back it up. I don't like you like that.
It's me. It's not you. It's me.
It's not you. It's me. Okay, so you're not drinking anything.
No, I've got a lot of work to do this
That's
evening.
all right. This has been a week. We were off last week. Thank you guys for coming back this week. We are, sometimes life and motherhood. Sorry, for all the moms out there. You couldn't see what I did, but I was giving you like the, I know the struggle is real. So we're just gonna, anyway.
Okay.
I was just trying to be a mom, y'all. Just trying to be a good mom. Okay. So, I promised a short story, but I'm going to say it's shorter.
Every time. It's going to be like 4 hours long. So
I know.
You guys just strap in.
Strap in, grab a drink.
Just grab the bottle.
Grab the bottle. Okay. So tonight's story is one that I heard it on a podcast, and it was one of those, like, I was like doing something else while I was listening to it, and I had to stop what I was doing to really listen to this story. It was just, it was something that, it was so interesting to me.
Yeah.
I had to rewind it, when you're in the car, you're doing laundry and you're like, whoa, I missed something, because you start thinking about chores, or you're just thinking about something else, and you kind of get lost. So I'm like, oh shit, I missed something. So I rewind it. So I had to stop and listen, which is hard to do with my ADHD anyway. But like I did, I just really thought this was interesting. So, Ashley, I asked you last time when we recorded, I said, have you ever heard of this story? Have you ever heard the story of Cowboy Bob?
Oh, no.
And you said no. So I was like, oh, well, I'm not telling you anything. So I didn't give you any hints.
I don't remember this, but I will take your word for it, because Cowboy Bob sounds amazing, and I would love to hear about Cowboy Bob.
So, dear listeners, tonight I'm excited to tell you the story of this bank robbing bandit.
Oh, yes, you did.
Known as Cowboy Bob.
I'm excited.
And just like the story of James Bergstrom, there was not a whole lot. There's good stuff, but not a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
So my primary sources for this was an article by Skip Hollandsworth at the Texas Monthly, and he wrote the article called "The Last Ride of Cowboy Bob," and that was back in November of 2005, and it was very timely at that time. So
yeah,
it's about that old. So you can look that up and read it. I love his writing. He's written other pieces that I've referenced for stories before as well. But I heard this story for the first time from the podcast Criminal, and it's their podcast number 140 called Cowboy Bob. I love Phoebe Judge. I'm Phoebe Judge. She's very breathy. I had to get used to that. Okay, so let's just get started, shall we?
Yes.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I just had to remove my earrings.
Oh, because they were hurting.
Yeah.
They were hurting.
Good. I'm good to go, guys.
So I'm just going to get into it.
Okay,
right.
I'm excited.
Again, I shortened this.
Sure.
I could have gone a little longer. All right. So in May of 1991, a bearded man driving a blue 1975 two-door Pontiac Grand Prix. Pretty cool looking car.
Yeah.
Pretty cool looking car. Wearing khaki pants, a dark shirt, leather jacket, and a cowboy hat, drove to the American Federal Bank just off West Airport Freeway in Irving, Texas. He casually walked up to the teller, and the teller said, "Hello, sir. How may I help you?" So Cowboy Bob pulls out a note, and it says, "This is a bank robbery. Give me your money. No marked bills or die packs." Simple. So this was the first of many bank robberies, but Cowboy Bob made no rookie mistakes. He kept his head down so the video camera wouldn't get a good shot of his mug. After getting the money, he actually walked out casually to his car. He did not make a run for it. He didn't look like the apparent bank robber. He just kind of like moseyed on out. He didn't drive off with a tire screeching on the pavement. Just casually took a leisurely drive away.
Another Friday,
right? Another day. After the FBI agent Steve Powell interviewed bank employees and watched the surveillance tapes, he had no doubt that they were dealing with a professional bank robber. This was his first robbery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So very, very good right off the bat.
Yeah.
Right? A couple of things, though, stood out to Agent Powell about their suspect. Number one, the beard was an obvious fake, but that was neither here nor there. Not surprising. You want to have a good disguise. But the number two thing was that the cowboy hat was backwards, which struck him as odd, but he was like, okay,
I didn't really realize it could be backwards.
I didn't, either. Well, yeah, because you have the like little pinchy part here. I guess if you did see it, I don't know that I would notice that though.
Yeah, I don't know unless I was just looking for it. I don't.
Right.
I don't know.
I'm not
a very good cowboy.
So. No, I don't know. Me either. Not a good cowboy. Not a good cowboy either. Then, so that was in May. Then in December of 1991, Cowboy Bob struck again. This time he stole $1,258 from the Savings of America in Irving, Texas. But this time, an eyewitness could write down the license number of that Grand Prix. So
that seems like a rookie mistake.
Score. Huh? Does that seem?
That seems like a rookie mistake.
Okay. But when the FBI, when Powell's FBI agents tracked the license plate and arrived at the owner's home, which was near the bank.
Yeah.
Right. They found a lady sitting in her living room who said she'd not been out of the house that day. So she took them outside to show her the car, which was a red Chevrolet. And that's when she noticed that her license plates were missing.
Nice. Okay. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
I take it back.
Ye spoke too soon. Ye spoke too soon. All right. So the FBI agent said the bank robber had stolen the license plates earlier that day and put it on his car to mislead them. So back to square one. Right.
Nice.
She apologizes, Cowboy Bob.
I'm just going to see my way out now.
So then in January of 1992, the next month, he struck again, this time on the other side of Dallas, hitting Texas Heritage Bank in Garland, Texas, for approximately $3,000. The streak continued in May of 1992 when he robbed $5,317 from the Nations Bank in Mesquite, Texas. And during this particular robbery, Cowboy Bob noticed some bills that contained a dye pack, and he just sweetly handed them back, like, nice try, sister. He handed it right back. And so for those of you who don't know, a dye pack is a small little package that explodes a few seconds after it passes underneath an electronic eye, which is positioned at the bank's exit.
Oh,
so okay. I thought it would be timed or something.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was like through.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So there you go.
We're teaching everyone now how to rob banks. Great.
So it would stain the money with permanent ink and sometimes staining the robber himself. So it makes it hard to spend that much money, much less get away without people knowing that, hey, you just robbed a bank, if it's on you or whatever. So then on September 25th, 1992, Cowboy Bob struck again and robbed First Gibraltar Bank in Mesquite and walked away with only $1,772. Not a huge jackpot for all the work that must go into it, right?
All the things
he did better.
Planning.
He did better than the last ones, So police officers roared up in their squad cars, followed about 10 minutes later by several vehicles filled with FBI agents, and they tracked the license plate on Cowboy Bob's car to a Mesquite resident who, predictably, went outside to his driveway to find his license plate missing. So that's your MO. Pretty smart.
Yeah.
It's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Find a car nearby and put it on your car. Pretty smart. So then, while agents were wrapping up their investigation at First Gibraltar, a call came in that Mesquite's First Interstate Bank, about a mile away, had just been robbed by a man in a beard, a cowboy hat, a leather coat, and gloves, and he had hit the jackpot, escaping with $13,706. Should have hit that bank first.
Yeah.
Right?
Nice.
He was so pleased, the teller said, that he gave her a kind salute as he left, tipping his hat with his gloved hand.
Oh, God, I love it. I kind of wish I was there for one of these bank robberies.
Never a weapon, always a note, always polite, in and out in about a minute.
Yeah.
Boom. Just brilliant.
Yeah.
He took the time to say, nope, that's got a dye pack. He knew what it looked like. And would kindly hand it back and walk right out. There was never cussing or meanness. It was always polite, and no one ever feared for their life. And it was all on camera, and that was it. So this comes from the Texas Monthly article by Skip Hollinsworth. This time, the license plate that the eyewitness saw on Cowboy Bob's brown Pontiac Grand Prix, I said blue earlier, apologies, brown, was traced to a man named Pete Tallis. FBI agents found Tallis at work at a Ford Auto Parts factory in nearby Carrollton. The agents asked me if I owned a Grand Prix with a certain license plate number, and I said, that's right, recalled Pete. I told them I'd given it to my mother and my sister, Peggy Jo, a year or so back because they couldn't afford a car. They said it was just used in a bank robbery. I said, bullshit, that car can't go fast enough. Pete gave the FBI the address of Helen and Peggy Jo's apartment. And when Powell and the other agents arrived, they spotted the car in the parking lot. As they discussed the possibility of storming the apartment and catching Cowboy Bob red-handed, they saw a woman in shorts and a t-shirt walk toward their car. Powell stared at her. Must be Cowboy Bob's girlfriend, he murmured to the other agents. They allowed her to drive away from the apartment so that the assumed boyfriend wouldn't see them. When they finally stopped her around the corner, Powell introduced himself to the woman, who politely said hello and told him that her name was Peggy Jo Tallis. She admitted that the car was hers, and she said she had driven it earlier that morning to a nursery to buy fertilizer. Powell opened the trunk of the car. There was indeed a big bag of fertilizer. He asked her if he could look around her apartment. For a moment, just a brief moment, she paused. No one was in the apartment, she said, except for her sick mother. Helen, her mother, slowly eased herself out of her bed after she heard the doorbell ring and walked to the front door. She opened it and screamed as the FBI agents darted past her, their guns drawn. They moved into Peggy Jo's bedroom. Her bed was immaculately made, and all of her clothes were hanging neatly in her closet. "What the hell?" said one agent. Then, looking at the top shelf of her closet, another agent saw the styrofoam mannequin's head with a beard pinned to it. He noticed the cowboy hat. When he looked under the bed, he saw a bag full of money. "Come on, Peggy Jo, you're hiding a man from us," Pal said. She gave him a look. "There isn't any man," she said. "I promise you that." Pal kept studying her. That's when he noticed the spots of gray dye in her hair and the faint splotches of glue above her lip. "I'll be damned," he said as he pulled out his handcuffs. He read Peggy Jo her rights and drove her to the downtown FBI office where the other agents were waiting. "Gentlemen," Pal said, "Cowboy Bob is actually Cowboy Babette." Babette. So that's right. Cowboy Bob was really Peggy Jo Tallis. So this is from the criminal podcast interview with Agent Powell. It was a great interview. She said, this is what he's saying. "And I said, 'All right, Peggy.' I said, 'You know, this car was used in the bank robbery. Who was driving it?' 'Well,' she said, 'just me.' And I said, 'It's going to be over here in just a minute.' I said, 'You need to tell me who he is. Tell me.' And she said, 'It's just me driving the car.' And I said, 'All right, well, who's in the apartment?' 'Well, just my elderly mother.' So I got out of the vehicle. She wasn't going to share anything with me, and I understand that. So I told the agent, I said, 'We're going to have to go in.' So I stayed with her, and some of the agents made entry into the apartment. And finally, one of the agents came back to the car and says, 'Steve, we've got a beard, the hat, the jacket, and a firearm.' And I said, 'Oh, okay.' So he was going back in, and I sat back in the car, and I said, 'Peggy, listen, you know, you've got the disguise. Now, where did he go?' And in just a moment, the agent came back out. I got out of the vehicle, and he said, 'Steve, we've got all of the money from both robberies.' And I said, 'Okay, good.' So I get back in the car, and I said, 'Hot Rod,' I said, 'you know this is over. Now you've got to tell me who he is.' She was very calm. And Phoebe, I'll say right up front with you, she never lied to me. And you know, in hindsight, I realize now she never lied. I kept saying, 'Who are you protecting?' 'Well, nobody.' 'Well, who's been in the car?' 'Just me.'
I mean, that is a good way to throw people off. They're not used to honesty.
Just like, I'm telling you. And we just kept going around and around that tree. All right. Now, Phoebe, about this point, I guess the sun had changed a little bit. And you've got to understand, I'm sitting in the back seat with her. I looked over at Peggy and I saw this, and I hate to say it like this, but this like white stuff kind of flaking out of her hair. And I, basically, I mean, it would be like either this person has extremely bad case of dandruff and then it hit me. She had taken, which I located myself in the apartment later, some spray that you get at like a Halloween costume store where you can spray your hair and turn it kind of white. And it was just falling out of her hair onto her shoulder. And to this day, I remember sitting there, and when I spotted that, boom, finally the light went off with me, and I realized, Jiminy Cricket, this is the bandit.
Jiminy Cricket.
That's how he talked.
I love it.
Hot Rod. She goes, "Did you really call her Hot Rod?" He goes, "Yeah, I think I called her Hot Rod." That's how I talked back then. That's what he said. Anyway, okay. So realizing that this is a pretty interesting case. I mean, not very many of these interesting cases come across, your desk, I'm sure, in your life. So he did what he could to get Peggy to talk. He wanted to know, how did you learn to rob banks? When was your first bank robbery, right? But why did you decide to rob 2 banks in one day? And why before the second robbery did you not take the time to switch the plates like you had before? Why didn't you do what you had done before? Had she gotten so cocky that she thought the FBI wouldn't catch her? Why was the pot from the first bank so small that you're like, fuck it, let's just go for the second one? Why did you do that? Because you would have gotten away with that, the second one, had you not done that. He said, if she had just followed her usual routine, we could have very still be wondering who Cowboy Bob really was.
Yeah.
Like
that is weird that she's
kind of admired her a little bit for that, But Peggy Jo wasn't talking. She ain't talking. She didn't even talk to her public defender, dude. She was like, I'm not talking. Just lock me up. Let me just get this over with, right? So actually the court-appointed attorney hired a psychologist specializing in evaluating criminals to evaluate her because she wouldn't talk to him. So he talked Dr. Richard Schmidt. So during their session, she eventually admitted that she had decided to rob a bank to pay for her mother's medications. And I'll get more into that in just a bit. But she certainly had no intention of robbing a second bank or third or fourth. She smoked a lot. So she's smoking during this whole thing. And she looks so normal. I don't want to say that. She looks just like me if I smoked, and you know what I mean? Just like he said. So he said, Skip Hollandsworth says, Schmidt could not take his eyes off of her. Up until that point, he had interviewed approximately 50 bank robbers, all of them male. He had never before interviewed what he described as a, quote, a nice, normal-looking woman who crossed her legs while she talked to him. So why did you keep robbing banks, he asked her. But she never answered. You know what I mean? Like, oh, gosh.
I'm sure it was the adrenaline.
Oh, I think so, too. I guess. Yes, maybe. I think she was just wild.
Yeah.
And I think,
love it.
I love that. Far. I know, right? She just kept staring at the wall and like, I don't know, shrugging her shoulders, shaking her head, smoking her cigarette. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just kept doing it. He says, her friend says, I guess it was hard for her to admit just how much fun she'd been having being a bank robber. That's what her friend said.
What a good friend.
I know.
To be so truthful.
They were all, it all comes out like that. So perhaps because she carried out these crimes without using any weapons, or perhaps because the judge agreed with the defense attorney's argument that Peggy Jo's behavior was, quote, completely out of character, she only received a 33-month sentence.
Oh, wow.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Not too bad. So a little bit about Peggy Jo, and this is from the article, as I think it does explain a little bit of maybe why she found it. So like it checks, you know what I mean? It checks. Okay. So she was the youngest of 3 children. When she was 4 years old, her father died of cancer, and her mother, Helen, found a job as a nurse's aide to support the family. And they lived in a tiny little rent house in the suburb of Grand Prairie. Peggy Jo's sister, Nancy, was a high school majorette, and her older brother, Pete, played on the district's championship basketball team. Peggy Jo, however, dropped out of high school after the 10th grade. She told me there was just too much else to do in life than spend so many days at school, Karen said. One day, in fact, Peggy Jo jumped in her car and drove to San Francisco because she wanted to see what life was like there. When she returned, she gave Karen a book of poems written by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the co-founder of San Francisco's famous City Lights bookstore, which I love, and an influential beat poet whose work often decried the emptiness of modern life. In one of his most famous poems, From a Coney Island of the Mind, he described America as a country of freeways 50 lanes wide on a concrete continent spaced with bland billboards illustrating imbecile illusions of happiness. I laughed and thought, of all people, Peggy Jo's been off reading poetry in San Francisco, Karen said. But that was just who she was, always ready for an adventure. When she was in her 20s, Peggy Jo got her own apartment in North Dallas and started working as a receptionist at the Marriott Hotel near downtown. She and another receptionist, a cute blonde named Cherry Young, who I mentioned earlier, went out almost every night. Peggy Jo always drove in her little burgundy Fiat, gunning the engine, racing other cars from stoplight to stoplight. They hit all the great Dallas nightclubs, Soul City, the Fog, the filling station on Greenville Avenue, ordering Coors, playing pool, and flirting with men. They went to see the Doors and the Doobie Brothers and even the Rolling Stones, screaming at the top of their lungs as a young, wrinkle-free Mick Jagger gyrated madly across the stage. Peggy Jo took Cherry to a coffee house where amateur poets read out of their notebooks, which she saw over and over. And they also went to the movies. Peggy Jo's favorite, which she saw over and over, was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Starring Paul Newman and Robert Redford, the movie tells the story of the famous bank and train robbing duo who lived in the last days of the Old West. Two good-natured Robin Hood-like outlaws who never believed that what they were doing was wrong because they never hurt innocent bystanders, and they always robbed from institutions that took advantage of downtrodden citizens. Although Butch and Sundance knew they had little chance of survival, they refused to walk away from life they loved, and they ended up in South America, still robbing banks, finally dying in a hail of gunfire. So that was her favorite movie of all time.
I just looked up pictures of her when she was like doing the robbery. Like, dang, her get up was.
But did you see a picture of her?
Yes.
She was really pretty.
She was really pretty, but to me, like her eyes, she looks insane. When I look at her, I'm like, she's insane. But she looks so, like you said, you don't want to say normal, but
she's blonde and, like this. Yeah, she's pretty.
Smiling.
I know.
Yeah. Very normal.
So her niece, Michelle, who said this about Peggy Jo. I promise you, my Aunt Peggy was the last person on earth you would ever imagine robbing a bank. Whenever I was in a car with her, she never drove above the speed limit. If anything, she drove below it. God bless her. I don't know how she did that. And she always came to a complete stop at stop signs. I wish my neighbors did that.
I just told you. Crazy. Who does that?
Neighbors, if you're listening, stop at the stop sign. Okay, so this is from the article again. Although female bank robbers are not unheard of, it is estimated that women commit less than 5% of some of the 7,600 bank robberies that take place each year in the United States. This is back in 2005. Almost all of them are young women who, like most of the men, rob banks for drug money, and only a few of those women rob more than a bank or two before they quit or get caught. Accordingly, when Powell and his team of FBI agents happened to corner Peggy Jo near her apartment in 1992, they assumed they would never be dealing with her again. She was one of those women they believed who had succumbed to a strange bout of middle-aged craziness. She wasn't poor, she wasn't an addict or an alcoholic, and from what people who knew her said, she was utterly harmless. Quote, a sweet lady who once chatted with me about the best way to grow plants on the front porch, one neighbor noted. Seemingly repentant, Peggy Jo pleaded guilty to bank robbery and quietly went off to prison for almost 3 years. And that seemed to be that. But this wouldn't be Case Files if that were that. That would have been like, and I'm done.
Yeah.
That's my story. All right. So Peggy Jo did try to put it all behind her. She did. She tried. She made she gave the old college try. By the mid-90s, she was out of the clink and back living with her mama. And so to avoid the obvious like shit talkers and the stairs and stuff like that, they moved to another little 2-bedroom townhome in Garland, Texas, about 1,120 square feet in size with a tiny backyard, kind of small for 2 people. I don't know. Is that small for 2 people? I don't even know.
I don't know.
I guess if it's one story, it's okay. She spent most of her time with her mom and so at this point, her mom was ill enough, like she couldn't hold her own silverware. Her shaking was so bad. And so every night Peggy Jo would bathe her mom and put her to bed. And then she would go into her room by herself and usually would watch nature documentaries on the Discovery Channel until late at night. And that was her life.
Wow.
Yeah. So for a while, she worked as a telemarketer, going to the office for a few hours a day, making cold calls, offering whoever answered the phone the opportunity to receive a catalog filled with lovely home decorative items. She later got a job as a cashier at Harbor Bay Marina, just outside of Dallas, and she would sell like coolers and minnows and keychains that float in water, things like that. Yeah. Her boss, Susie Leslie, 2 first names for a full name. So for a while, she worked as a telemarketer, going to the office just for a few hours a day, making cold calls, offering whoever answered the phone the opportunity to receive a catalog filled with lovely home decorative items. I would not have wanted to get that phone call. She later found a job as a cashier at the Harbor Bay Marina at Lake Ray Hubbard. So that's just outside of Dallas, for those of you who know the area. So she would sell customers everything from coolers to minnows to those keychains that float in the water, which is pretty handy when you're on the water. So this is from an article the article, and it's said by her boss, Susie Leslie. She was one of our best employees. Not once did the money in the cash register come up short on her shift. And what I loved about Peggy Jo was that she checked on the poor customers. She was constantly pulling out her own money to help some of the families pay for bait. She used to visit with a poor Vietnamese woman who came out here to fish off the docks for her family's supper. There was a man who came out here who was deaf, and Peggy would write down questions on a sheet of paper asking him if there was anything he needed. And I know she used to give some money to a man out here who had been in prison and was still down on his luck. One day I asked her why she did that, and she said, well, we all got a past, you know.
Very admirable.
What a nice person.
Yeah.
Kind of sounds like an amazing woman, right?
I know.
You rooting for her?
I feel bad for wherever this story is going, but yes.
You rooting for her? Anyway, in December of 2002, Helen, Peggy Jo's mom, died in her sleep at the age of 83, and Peggy Jo was at her mother's bedside holding her hand. Her old boss and then eventual good friend, Susie, said this: she could have put her mother in a nursing home a long time ago. But when we talked about up at the marina, she said to me that she wanted her mother to be at home to live out her last years in dignity, sleeping in her own bed. She was relieved her mother was no longer in pain, yet you could tell she was still heartbroken. She couldn't talk about Helen without tears coming to her eyes. So in the spring of 2004, Peggy Jo was ready to just live her life, it seems. She approached a man at the marina who was selling a Frontier RV, and she gave him $5,900 in cash and promised to pay him $500 more later. She told her friend Susie that the time had come to move on. She was going to put some money together and head down to Padre Island or Mexico and live on the beach like she had always wanted to. And she didn't have to be a caretaker anymore, so she was going to finally get to live her life. You're looking at me
because
like I'm being sus.
No, because like I just want this to end happily ever after, and I already know that this is case files, and it's not.
She even told Susie that she should join her while she had the chance, quote, before life ran out on us. This is from the article. In the late summer of 2004, Peggy Jo left a telephone message for Carla Dunlap, another friend from the marina. When Carla had developed breast cancer the previous year, Peggy Jo had checked on her nearly every day and had bought her a cap to wear when her hair began to fall out from chemo. On the message, she asked how I was doing, and she said she was about to hit the road, Carla said. And then she said, and no matter what happens to me, always remember that I love you. Concerned, Carla's husband, John, drove out to the park to see if he could find her and perhaps give her some money, but she was already gone. Where Peggy Jo went still remains the subject of great speculation. Months later, people would say that they had seen her at Lake Texacoma and Lake Lavon. Others would say they had seen her driving her RV through various East Texas towns. And some would say they had seen her in Tyler in October of 2004, right about the time that an odd bank robbery occurred at the small Guarantee Bank on the southern edge of the city. According to the tellers, the robber was an older man with a round stomach and a scraggly mustache. He wore a dark floppy hat, baggy clothes, and gloves. He placed a green canvas bag on the counter and said, "All your money, no bait bills, no blow-up money." Then, after receiving a stack of cash, the authorities would not say exactly how much, he walked out of his bank down the street. No one got a glimpse of his getaway vehicle. One of the tellers did tell FBI agents that she was struck by the softness of the robber's voice. It sounded a bit feminine. What's more, the teller said, the robber's mustache appeared to have been glued on, and his stomach looked more padded than real. Kind of sounds like they had their run-in.
Sounds like a judgy bank teller. Man.
Sounds like they had their run-in with Cowboy Bob. I mean, like, oh, the mustache is maybe a little crooked, you know. So now at this point, Agent Steve Powell had been retired. He was teaching classes, and he would use his story about Cowboy Bob to impart some wisdom. Like, well, you never know who your bandit is going to be. Unfortunately, though, the agents who are investigating this particular robbery did not take that class. They would bring in an older male suspect who would take a lie detector test, and then he passed with flying colors. So then they started investigating other older men, and they were just kind of, not looking at other options. They did not even think that it could have been an older. If they had been told that their suspect was a 60-year-old spinster who drove an RV with pretty purple curtains, they probably would have laughed out loud. They didn't take his class. Then on May 5th of 2005, Peggy Jo drove to Tyler, Texas, and parked her RV next to a Jack in the Box, which happened to be across the street from Guarantee Bank, the very bank that had been robbed the previous October. Holding a black satchel, she said to the teller, "This is a robbery. I need all of your money. Don't set off any alarms." The teller, a young woman barely out of her teens, gave Peggy Jo everything she had in the drawer, which was $11,241. Wow. That was big. Yeah. That's huge. This was like the robbery back in Mesquite, 1992.
Yeah.
All she had to do was get out of there and head south, and she could finally get to Mexico and start her new life on the beach. But she made one big but simple mistake. She didn't check for the dye pack.
Oh, shit.
It exploded as soon as she walked out the door, covering the money with red ink. She dodged traffic to get back to her RV, but she was already seen by so many people at that point. There was the utility worker that saw her, called 911. There was a family driving down the road past her, and they said, "You know what? I bet that person just robbed a bank." And they couldn't tell if it was a man dressed as a woman or a woman, but they were
yeah. But if I saw someone
the dust is still going.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know
out of a bank.
Oh, well, walking out of the bank.
You're walking out of the bank.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like driving down the road. I was like, I don't know that I would automatically assume someone covered in paint was.
So as soon as she walked out of the door.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
And then it's like a big
I got you now.
Smoke bomb goes off. And so everyone's seeing that. And they're like,
I'm with you now.
So they call 911. The utility worker called 911.
Oh, and everyone's got cell phones.
Everybody's got, this is 2005. Everybody's got a cell phone.
I was in high school then. I hate you.
Okay, so and unluckily for Peggy Jo, FBI agents just happened to already be in town because they had been investigating another string of robberies, totally not having anything to do with her. It was like a group of dudes, and anyway. And so they were already looking for bank robbers, and they were already in that part of town. And so now this call comes in, and they're like, what? So within minutes, this posse of law enforcement, they're following her in her RV. You got the curious citizens, Chris and Courtney Smith, and they got their kids in the car, and they're like, just put your heads down, but they're following right behind her because they want to fucking see what happens. And then the RV was going up the hill. It's chugging, it's dying. It cannot get above the speed limit. because it's an RV, I guess, going up a hill. She tried to lose them, but she couldn't. And she was eventually cornered. She tried to like go down a side street and they met her. So they have her cornered. They jump out, guns drawn, they're in bulletproof vests. They don't even see who's really in the car. They can't tell who's in the RV. Was it the suspects they had been chasing? Was it this middle-aged white woman or man that was in this weird costume? Like, they don't know. They're in a disguise. What's happening? The curtains were drawn also, so no one could really see inside this RV. So they start yelling, you know, the usual, come on out, put your hands up, you're surrounded, make this easy on yourself, that kind of shit. And this went on for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, she just sat in this RV smoking her cigarette thinking, the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah.
This is from the podcast. The cops almost gasped when this elderly lady opened the door and stood on the steps. And she says, I'm not coming with you. I'm not going back. According to police, she waved a toy pistol in the air and said, you're gonna have to kill me. The police spokesperson later said that the pistol, quote, looked real. There was nothing to indicate it was a toy. When Peggy Jo Tallis pointed her pistol at the police officers, they shot her. She was 60 years old when she died.
No.
She would be in Mexico right now if that dye pack had not gone off. In this story, although it is about a bank robber, it's about a criminal. It is. It had me so conflicted. I am not going to lie. I was rooting for her. This story.
She was doing it for all the right reasons.
And
in the beginning.
But she was also just a good person.
I know.
She wasn't hoarding that money either. She was giving her money away.
She was like Robin Hood.
She was like Robin Hood. She was just like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. But what a life she lived.
Yeah.
And she had a friend saying she went out doing what she loved.
See, this is what I love about her friends.
And that is
they didn't even, none of this, she lit up a room or anything. She loved rubbing banks. You know, that was just her thing. Like, I love it. How honest they were about it.
They were like, she did. Because she didn't want to admit that.
Yeah.
But she was going to do this one more.
Yeah.
One more score. One more heist. And then she was going to be in Mexico, living her best life.
Yeah.
And so she's no longer with us. So rest in peace, Peggy Jo Tallis. And that is my story about Cowboy Bob.
Yeah, that was a really good story.
And it was short for me.
I don't know how I'm going to top that.
You say that every single time.
Now I have to find a man that was dressed like a woman robbing banks or something.
But isn't that so interesting? To me, it just like stopped me in my tracks.
And the fact that the police just could not believe a woman was the one doing it.
That's the part that got me like, listen, Hot Rod.
Listen, Hot Rod.
Who's the guy? Who's the guy? What was that?
Germany crickets.
Sure.
What?
That's not how Texans talk.
I just said Hot Rod.
Hot Rod. You're like Jiminy Crickets. I'm not really sure what
Jiminy Crickets.
But the
who says Jiminy Crickets? Texans don't say Jiminy Crickets.
Cotton chicken candy nuggets. It's like a good way to cuss if you're in Texas.
Oh.
Cotton chicken candy nuggets. That's what we say around here.
I can't remember that. We just say bless your heart.
Bless your heart. Well, that is my story. It is a short one. I did a short
really
one.
Good.
I'm very proud of myself. Kept it succinct tonight.
Yes.
But this story really did truly stop me in my tracks to listen. And I had to rewind it. Like, let me start from the beginning. Let me really pay attention.
Next to that one, that really, really ridiculous one.
The which one?
The one, was it the marriage one? The other one you did where it just had me laughing the whole time. I don't remember now.
The marriage one?
The one where they convinced people.
The one in Australia? The cult?
Yes.
With the witch and the 57th generational witch?
that one was good too. But the couple where they twin flame.
Oh, twin flame.
The ridiculousness of the twin flame things that they said on their videos. Anyways, this was really good. I loved this one. I forgot about the witch in Australia. That was a pretty good one.
I'm a bird. Tweet, tweet. Cheep, cheep.
Oh, man.
Okay, turn into a bird. Okay. Let me just do it.
That was such a good one. Oh, man.
Chirp, chirp, chirp. Get the fuck off that couch. You look ridiculous. That was so good.
You guys got to go back and listen to that
God,
one if you haven't.
That story was bonkers.
I love it.
Bonkers. Oh my God. But this story, I'm so happy I get to share it with people. If you have not ever heard of this, I'm so excited that you get to hear about it.
Yes. Texas Monthly puts out a lot of good articles and pictures and all that kind of stuff for stories.
Yeah. So I'll make sure to give you those to post. But anyway, so you have a story ready for us next week?
I don't.
Okay, but you're gonna.
I mean, I would like to say it's not going to be a disappearance. But we all know I'm a creature of habit. So it will probably be one.
We love you, Ashley, so much.
That's debatable. But
so much.
We'll see. Right. We'll see what I'm doing. I don't know.
All right, everybody. Well, we will see you next week. Thanks for sticking by us.
Yes.
Every week and all the times that we have to take off for, life reasons. But we love you and we'll see you next week. Bye.